This is Mark Hirsch for Life the Basic Manual. This is the second in a series of videos I'm going to do about the criminal justice system in the United States. Before I go any further, though, I'd like to make a correction. I stated in my first video that the United States was the #1 per capita incarceration country in the world. That's not true. I dug in and did a little research, and I found out that the tiny Seychelles Islands in the Indian Ocean are actually #1 in per capita incarceration. They're incarcerating approximately 750 people right now, and that equals a higher percentage of their population than the 2.2 million or more that are currently incarcerated in the United States. So I want to correct the record as soon as possible and let you know that the United States is no longer #1. But go US, you can do it. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what happens when you end up in the police interrogation room. We've all seen it on TV. They lead the suspect, or subject as they like to call them, into a small room with a couple of chairs. There's usually a mirrored window in the room, which on the other side of is more police officers watching and a video recorder, and they're making a recording of all the proceedings that are happening in there to use later in court. Unfortunately, this isn't always what happens. Making a video record is the preferred method, however, because otherwise all there is to rely on about what happened in the interrogation is the police reports that the police write up. When you get into court, it's a bad situation really for both sides. Of course, the prosecutors believe that what is written in the report is true, and the defense is always saying, no, it's not true. My client never said that. Unfortunately for the defendant, if they're right, it's pretty hard to get a jury to believe that the police are lying. So it ends up in a situation where nobody's really having a good time of it. It's a good idea to record these proceedings. There's really not much in the way of rules that police have to follow in an interrogation, but one of them you've probably heard about. It's the Miranda warnings. The police in the United States are required to inform anybody who's in custody and is undergoing an interrogation that they have a right to remain silent and that their silence cannot be used against them, and that they also have a right to an attorney. So what this means is that when the interrogation is going forward, if the subject says, I want an attorney, the police are supposed to stop questioning them. That doesn't mean that they have to stop talking to them. Sometimes the police will go on in a monologue about all the evidence they have and how much jail time there's going to be or prison time. And as long as they don't ask a question, they're on safe ground there, because the criminal suspect can give up their right to silence anytime they want to just by speaking, as long as it's not in response to a question. So that's another technique that the police use to make their interrogations easier. Why do the police care if their interrogations are easy? Well, that's pretty simple. When the police get a confession, their work is basically over. They found out who did it, they move on. Case closed. So they're anxious to get another confession. They always think that the one that they have in the box is the guilty one, and they push for a confession. Aside from the things I mentioned about the Miranda warnings and that they cannot ask questions after somebody's invoked their right to a lawyer, about the only other constraint on the police is that they can't, physically beat a confession out of somebody. What ends up happening is that the police use a variety of techniques, and they're all sanctioned by Supreme Court decisions. They lie to the suspect. They tell them, oh, your partner's in the other room telling us all about what you did. Or, oh, we have some physical evidence. We found some physical evidence with your fingerprints on it, when it's not true. And they use these types of techniques to rattle the suspect and get them to say, okay, I did it. Even if they didn't sometimes, but we'll get back to that later. Another technique that the police use is what's known as tricking the suspect. My favorite story about that is the police officers who, starting to get the idea that their suspect wasn't the brightest bulb in the tree, took him to the other room, had him put his hand under the glass of a photocopier, hit the switch, the light went, and a piece of paper rolled out the other end that said, "He's lying on it." After showing this to the subject, the person promptly confessed. Case closed. Another win for the good guys. When you're in the interrogation booth with the police, you have to remember that, especially the detectives, these are people that are experts at interrogating someone. They pick up on any inconsistencies, and they have many techniques that they use to make the person more likely to tell them what they want to hear, which is called a confession. Remember, I said in my first part of the series that criminal justice in the United States is a big business. Well, it's true. I talked about everybody getting paid in the courtroom, but there's other people that get paid too. There's experts in interrogations that put on seminars for police officers to teach them how to do this. They're getting paid as well. And the police, they're learning how to be expert interrogators, and they use this when they come into the room. One of the most common techniques that's taught in these classes on how to interrogate is a method by which the police slowly over time break down the subject into a hopeless condition. They talk over and over to them again about how much evidence they have, about it's too bad they won't be able to see their children for such a long time, about what things are like up in the prison and how long they're going to be there, and then again to how much evidence we have against you. And then, after they've broken them down into hopelessness, they offer them a way out. They tell them, you know, it's really a shame, but there's nothing we can do to help you unless you cooperate with us. If you cooperate with us, we'll help you. Of course, that's another lie too, because they don't have anything to say about what's going to happen to you once they get the confession. That's up to the district attorney and the judge. But this technique works often, and it's been proven that sometimes even innocent people have confessed after hours and hours and hours of this type of technique, because they become so convinced that they're going to go down for the count anyway that they just go for it. They say, yes, what do you want me to tell you? And how can you help me? So when I think about this, if you'll recall, in my last part of the series, I ended up with a lot of questions about whether the system is fair, whether people are getting a good deal, whether everything was going right. And I find I have questions about this part of the process as well, especially when there's no video recording of what's going on. So who knows? I'm sure that a lot of people that come into the box, as they call it, are guilty. And the police are just doing their job, and they're trying to get the person to confess. They want to make it easier on the victims. They want to make it more sure that the person will enter a plea agreement instead of having a jury trial. All these things go into the thinking. But I bet there's a lot of people that end up being questioned by the police that didn't really do it. And to be subjected to that, I think it's a good idea to have some kind of advance warning about what can happen to you there. Because the other technique that they use, if you invoke your right to remain silent, they have a way of trying to make you feel guilty, like, well, an innocent person wouldn't be silent. They would tell their side of the story. And many, many people have gone for that type of reasoning and have talked themselves into a jail sentence. So thanks for listening. When I come back with my next part of the series, number 3, I'm going to talk about what it's like in the neighborhoods and how it got that way. So I hope you'll join me then. So for the Life the Basic Manual, this is Mark Hirsch. Thanks for listening.